Hey, Sander here. So as promised in the last video, I've got a whole list of things you can do if you want your working life to improve for the better through AntiWork. I've ordered it from least effort to maximum effort because not everybody can spare the time and money to go above and beyond. I get that people have bills, some people have families, and that's okay. Do the most you can and we'll win. And the nice thing, maybe the only nice thing, about being in the 99% is that we do have a numbers advantage. So, without further ado, number one, don't go to work on Black Friday. Simple as that. Not crossing picket lines is the best thing you can possibly do for the movement. Bar none. Don't call in, don't respond to your boss's emails, don't give your employer an inch during the strike. You might want to stock up on supplies beforehand so you can go without buying as well, without working. This increases the pressure on your bosses. They won't be making a profit. If at all possible, you should also try to get your fellow employees on board, which more on that later. Your risk of punishment is way lower if you're standing side by side with your coworkers. So getting them on your side will help a lot if you're concerned about retaliation or firing. This brings us right along to the next easiest thing you can do to help, which is spreading the word. Simply letting people know about the general strike is extremely important. Marketing campaigns are expensive, very expensive, and to be honest, I feel like Google might even not spread ads around a general strike. It goes so against their corporate interests. Anyway, AntiWork has around 1 million subscribers as of now, and that's a lot, but not enough for a total general strike. In other words, we have to do our own marketing. So don't get me wrong, even 100,000 striking workers would make waves and likely result in higher wages and stronger worker rights. But it probably wouldn't constitute a total general strike and would not achieve some of the loftier demands. General strike, for those who don't know, is amazing, and one of the few ways things tend to change for the better. It's when the majority of a given community stops working to make demands of the ruling class. It's a time-honored tradition, arguably started with the secession of the plebs back in Roman times, and it more or less constituted a bit of a slave revolt. Oversimplifying things greatly, but they actually got some rights after that, which was nice. So if all of the 100,000 workers I mentioned earlier went on strike and lived in the same city or worked in the same industry, it would be a huge general strike. But spread throughout the US, you wouldn't really have the same impact. So, if the majority of this subreddit's users are in the US, which as an American I assume is the whole world, we need to recruit around 50 individuals each, or maybe 20 if they're all in the same industry. I joke about the US thing, but I am assuming because it's an English-speaking board, it's US, UK, maybe Australia, but I know English is a common second language, so maybe not. But just as an order of magnitude guesstimate, around 50 per person is more than enough. And that sounds really intimidating, but keep in mind that our ask is literally be lazy to make more money. I think it's an easy sell if you frame it the right way. Plus, you can probably reach 50 people in like a week just by putting up a flyer on a busy intersection on a traffic light, Or you could post it in a big Facebook group you're in, you can post it in group chats with friends, you can post it with romantic partners or romantic partners' friends. All are quick and easy ways to just drop a link to the AntiWork general strike announcement and say, hey, this sounds kind of cool, I think I'm going to do it. You want to join me? It's really easy, and it could honestly just take you seconds, and it could be huge. So, that's number two. Number three, a little more tricky, unionize. So this one can be tough. It also is not as difficult as it sounds. Essentially, all you have to do is persuade the majority of your coworkers that work sucks and you all deserve better pay / conditions / benefits. And in most places I've worked at, this has not been a difficult thing to find agreement on. In fact, I have not had a single job where most fellow employees didn't universally agreed that they were not being paid enough for this shit. And that management was making horrible mistakes that really wouldn't happen if it were put to a vote by the people nearest to the problem, the people doing the actual work. Autocratic management just sucks, and sadly, it's the norm right now. In my opinion, directly democratic unions are the only reliable way to shift power and money back into the hands of people who work for a living. So generally, the only real disagreement I've run into while talking to people about unionizing are around questions of, can anything be done about it, and will a union actually help? The answers are, obviously, yes and yes. As I've covered in my last video, general strikes are the primary reason why working conditions are not as bad as they used to be, and unions reliably increase pay around 130%. Not plus 130% times 130%, but still. And that's not including benefits or the increased job security you get from belonging in a union. Also, unions bring the benefit of being able to coordinate things like general strikes more easily. If enough general strikes happen, this has happened before in history, you can shift control of entire organizations to the employees from the CEOs. There's a leftist term for this, means of production, but really, honestly, terms like socialist, communist don't have to come into the discussion. If you want a bigger slice of the pie, this is what you ought to be doing strategically. Anyway, if you got your coworkers' numbers, or if you already talked to them outside of work, that's for the best. That's the best way to talk to people about this sort of thing. It should be especially easy. Bear in mind that it can be dangerous to try to unionize, especially if you're at will employed. This sort of means that your employer can fire you without really giving a reason, or they can give any reason. And although it's technically illegal to fire people for unionizing, they can just make up a different reason and fire you anyway. So the people in gigs or at will employment, it is particularly risky. However, I would also say it's particularly worth it. Those jobs tend to have horrible benefits and be really exploitative. So if you want things to improve, yeah, unionizing is probably a good option. It's worth the risk of permanent improvement against the downside of going back to a job search, you know? Even though, believe me guys, I understand those can be rough. I applied to 50 English teacher jobs and I got an unpaid internship. So, I relate. Anyway, if you are really worried about losing your job, which, again, sometimes is warranted, there are some steps you can take to make it more or less entirely risk-free for you. You can put up posters in employee bathrooms. Hopefully your boss is not watching you take a shit. If he is, then dear God, you do really need a union. Yeah, so putting up there, employee break rooms, areas where only employees go, and just having a link or a QR code, or even just a number you can text. All of these are pretty good ways to get people involved. I'm developing a tool called Rabble Rouse to try to make this easier, but as of now, I think there are tools on Facebook groups that let you make QR codes for group chats. You can print one of those out, put it in an employee bathroom, bing, bang, boom. All of a sudden, you have a group chat with all your coworkers, and that's pretty much a union. It's getting close. All you have to do there to get a union is to get the majority of you to agree that, hey, we probably should band together, and that, you know, things could improve in the workplace in any way, not just pay. Working conditions, benefits, the way management treats you. There are so many ways that unions can help. After you get everyone on the same page about that, you just have to drop some demands and set a date to strike. That's it. Well, that's it. It can be dangerous to your employment status, at least. And it can be intimidating, for sure, to be the one who organizes it. But it's worth it, and you'll basically be a hero to your coworkers. If you need help or resources, you can contact an relevant trade union like the SEIU for service workers, the UAW for the auto workers, or the AFT for teachers. Or you can talk to even larger unions like the IWW, the Teamsters, or the AFL-CIO. Personally, I think the IWW is the coolest of all of these, but they don't have a lot of power right now. The Teamsters were acquired by the state, which means they are sometimes less effective, but they are large and they do have some power, so worth thinking about. Remember, all you need to do is convince the majority of your coworkers that banding together is a good idea and agree on demands to management. Unionizing can definitely be difficult depending on your coworkers, but at the end of the day, it's kind of just working together with your colleagues, which in most jobs is what you've been doing since day one. Plus, it's in your best interests. The worst that can happen is you get canned. And that can be bad for some people, but unemployment is decently robust right now, and a job search, I would say, is less bad than working for God knows how many years at a place that is making you miserable and does not pay well. Plus, it'll make this whole strike thing way more likely to succeed, and it'll probably increase your take-home pay at that. I can also make another video outlining more detailed strike and unionizing tactics if there's interest in this option. There's a lot to be said on the matter, and I'm by no means an expert, but I've done my research and I've gone to a few lectures on the subject, so I can share. Finally, number 4, mutual aid. This is a new one to some people, but very worth it. In essence, mutual aid is a charity that helps you too in the long run. Sometimes immediately, just not all the time. Mutual aid is an anarchist principle, but don't let the name scare you. It has nothing to do with Molotov cocktails or anything like that. It involves meeting needs instead of making profit. The mutual part comes from organizations providing for one another's needs for mutual benefit. Essentially, a lot of communities working together in an attempt to meet all needs. The basic strategy for this, the incentive for each org, is that they depend on the rest of the network to meet their other needs. They want these other organizations to be working at their peak capacity. There's not competition, it's cooperation. In essence, mutual aid is sort of an alternate economic societal system that works on cooperation and caring, as opposed to neoliberal capitalism, which encourages predatory behavior, destruction, and greed. Which I don't think is great. I think we can maybe do better. I don't know. For a personal example, I work at a mutual aid org that provides food for anyone in need, mostly the homeless in practice. In exchange for my labor, I receive almost all the food I need for a week in pay. Food is gleaned from donor farms and individuals, given away by supermarkets who think it's unsellable for whatever reason, usually like mildly ugly fruit, or farmed in our own urban gardens, which is very cool. I haven't shopped for food in quite a while, and I also feel like I'm really helping others each day I go there. So I highly recommend it. It's saved me money, arguably more than a normal job would, and I just highly recommend everyone find their local mutual aid orgs. There are a lot of them. Food Not Bombs is a huge one. I'm not going to reveal the exact one I go to, but I quite like it, just because I don't know if they want to be associated with my hot takes on here. But they almost all are focused around helping people. You can feel real good at the end of the day, and you get something out of it, too. And long term, if they succeed and sort of supplant businesses as the primary mode of production, we would be living in a much, much nicer world where, more or less, there is no need for money, which sounds absurd and pie in the sky, but it is the world that would be accomplished if mutual aid took over. Sounds pretty sweet. I don't know. We also wouldn't be suffering as much from climate change. I could go on and on about how cool mutual aid is. I'll spare you. But the world would be a much kinder place. Anyway, that's it for the list. I don't have a script for this part. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found these suggestions doable. By no means do you have to do all of them, but I do really encourage you to give some of them a shot. The movement really needs it, and if the movement succeeds, your pay could triple, right? In a lot of parts of the U.S., minimum wage is still $7 an hour, almost, like $7.20, I think. And one of the demands of the Black Friday strike is $36 an hour. That could be huge, potentially, for some people who are making minimum right now, which is not insignificant. That could quintuple their salary. Quintuple. 7 times 5, 35, right? Even more than quintuple in that case. It would be huge. So consider it. So yeah, that's my bit. Thank you for watching. Let me know if you'd like to see more like this.